So let's look at some of my favorite stuff about component testing and the workflows that you can do with it. First up, we'll talk about using sci.pause, which is a command you can use in end-to-end or component testing, but we can pause a test for demo purposes at any point we like. So we can say, oh, here's an admin user. This admin user has certain privileges, so this component is going to allow them to do something special. We want to make assertions about that. And we can then press play and go to, this is a regular user. This component does not give them certain privileges, so we have some assertions that they cannot do certain things, but they can still do all the things they're supposed to be allowed to do. This lets us make videos of components that are in progress and explain them to other stakeholders in a way that's really clear. It helps to have the expectations and stuff in the sidebar as well, so the demo can include that sort of functionality that's being tested. I've used this for live demos, I've used this for recordings, and I find this just a really helpful way to lean on the work that was already done for testing to get a component working, instead of having a separate thing that I use just for demos that needs to be managed on its own. So I like that a lot. And let's see what's next is, if I didn't already have this component test, I really like the create from spec workflow. So this is pretty new, just works through Vue at the time I'm recording this, but I can go and say, oh, welcome.view, that's the component I want to mount. And we just do a little bit of work to get it in the right place for you and get it up and running. And we can run it immediately and see that it does mount the component. It doesn't do anything else, doesn't pass it any props, which I think is an issue. So what we should do is modify this, and we can see that it was created here alongside the welcome component and the other welcome test. But we could also just open it directly from the Open in IDE link, which I think is a really nice workflow. And then we can come in and add a prop. So we'll say props, username, Mark. I'm going to use that as the username, and we should see welcome, Mark. And now we can actually go, okay, what's this component responsible for? What do we want to assert? And what I really like is you get instant feedback about the component's responsibilities when you work on the component. And it makes it very clear in a component test exactly what each component is supposed to handle. And I find that documentation comes in useful as you later on have more complex situations and you want to sort out exactly what each component's supposed to do. So here we can do a sci.contains for this whole message, and we're actually checking like two separate things by asserting that. So obviously first we're checking from a user-facing perspective, do we see the message that we expect? So that's this part of the component's responsibilities, is to say, hey, welcome, whatever the username is, and put an exclamation point, right? We're kind of combining the prop with some static information to produce a single message. And so we're getting the confirmation that that's working. But we're also getting confirmation that the component API does actually provide a username prop and that that's stable. And that's feedback I really want when I'm developing a component. I don't want to wait for an end-to-end test that happens to consume this component inside of the page that it's testing and has an assertion that is impacted by a change like this. So if I change username to something like that, I want the component tests to fail really fast, so I know at the time that I'm developing the component that, oops, I broke the API, because I could fix the API here, right? I could think I fixed it because I matched up the name. It's still broken though. And I wouldn't really fix the test unless I deliberately changed what was being tested, and then it would start to work again. But more likely, the test is actually specifying the prop name that we want, and so if I accidentally break it, I should think twice because there are other people using this prop. So I should be able to fix this here and get it back in shape, and that way I know that my edits are not affecting consumers of the component who also depend on the API, and I like that a lot.